So I put like half a gram into the syringe, hoping it would kill me. I apparently fell out and hit my face going into overdose on the floor. Like, I wish I could take trauma away from my mother. But Tiffany locked herself in the closet, was crying, wouldn't open the door. So I was basically laying on the floor dying, and finally my mom somehow got in and started performing CPR. And that's honestly the only reason I lived till the paramedics got there. But being a dad now, thinking of your mother, we're thinking of me doing that to my kid. I think I had 1 beat per minute for 5 minutes, so I was almost gone. I tell people this about my story all the time, like, what does it look like when you go out? And I don't know what your experience was, but mine was really dark. I didn't see a light, but I heard a voice, and I always joke that it was the paramedics, rubbing the things together and hitting me, but the voice said, I'm not done with you yet.
Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be? Brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous. Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson.
Welcome to Powerful Beyond Measure, a podcast about radical transformation, gritty stories, and the undeniable power of second chances. I'm your host, Matt Culp, a man in long-term recovery who believes in the power of grace, grit, and growth. Each week, we sit down with real people who've overcome real struggles, from addiction to adversity, and found hope on the other side. No fluff, no filters, just truth, healing, and hope. And the truth is, you are powerful beyond measure, and it's time you knew it. Today's guest is Tyler Bowman. I think we're on episode, I always forget, 23 or 24?
350.
Yeah, close.
Okay.
I've got a lot filmed. The guy out there was like, he's like, man, you're on a roll. And I was like, I am. I think, if I go on vacation, I just want it stacked up or whatever.
Yeah, you just shoot them out. But no, I'm excited to see you do this, man. It's something that I think will hit on a lot of topics for a lot of people nowadays. So
it's kind of like I know what would make a successful podcast, like bringing on like bigger names and stuff. And I have brought on like one big name or whatever, but like that's not really what I want to do. I just know people that have cool stories, and I'm like, well, let's get their stories on camera.
Well, I think that's the best thing is like understanding that all walks of life, right? Whether you have money, whether you have prestige or whatever, none of that matters. We all suffer from the same things. We all go through the, same traumas. We're all human. So I like that, you bring just people like us, average Joes, in just to talk about our history and like, because if we could just reach one person that's in a bad place and they're like, man, that makes sense. And then it starts the progression of them starting to maybe look into changing some things about themselves, addict or not. I think that's pretty cool.
I've had some success like on social media.
Have you?
Yeah, maybe like 15, 20 people have reached out to me about their addiction.
Cool.
So some of them like are ready. Some of them are ready to go to treatment. Some of them are just like, I don't know what to do.
It's amazing, Matt. Yeah. Just from this short span of, jumping this platform off.
It's pretty cool.
You've already reached people.
Well, I did have a lot bigger following, and then I got terminated.
Yeah.
So I'm rebuilding.
Humble beginnings, starting over.
I'm rebuilding it.
Well, you're doing a good job, man.
Yeah.
I'm Tyler Bowman, from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Born in Franklin, Tennessee, raised here. Parents graduated and went to MTSU. And, I was born in 1987. Parents, when I was 5 years old, they went through a divorce separation, and I don't really have a lot of memory of my parents being together, you know, and because of that, and we'll get into this later. It kind of bled into relationships in the future, not understanding what husband and wife looked like, what does a family look like. But they divorced when I was 5, so it was a lot of back and forth, you know, between the homes. My parents were amazing, right? But they were going through a lot of tough things, you know, financially through the divorce, all of those things. And, you know, just I would say the behavior started early. You know, when you hear other addicts or alcoholics tell their story, they're like, I knew it very early. I did too. I just felt different. And that's what you generally hear in most of our stories is we just felt different when we look in the mirror, whether it's, you know, at an early age, me, you know, not liking myself or looking in the mirror and just not liking what I saw. Like I had a lot of feelings that I just never really communicated going through that period of my life as a kid. You know, my parents were hardworking, successful. They raised me better than becoming an addict, right?
Yeah.
But I still went down that path. And, you know, when they divorced, it was really just the bouncing back and forth, the manipulation. That's what I could see very early. You know, if I couldn't manipulate one for one thing, I could turn the other on the other parent, right? And now that I'm a dad of 3 girls, I'm sitting here watching this and I'm like, I know what you're doing, but you're not parent splitting, right? We're united front in our marriage, and we not perfect. We have our moments, right? But like we back each other. And so, you know, that early stuff and really the drugs and alcohol didn't come into play for me. I played baseball growing up. That was what I wanted to do with my life. I wanted to be a baseball player. And I filled a lot of my time playing sports. I went to MTCS from the time I was in 3rd to 8th grade. So Militancy Christian School here in Murfreesboro. You know, I think
they have a good baseball team.
They had a baseball team.
Oh, okay.
They're a lot better now.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't, and I think they were single A, but you know, I wasn't bad, man. I started varsity my 8th grade year, and there were some resentments from, you know, some of the seniors playing, and like I internalized all these things about myself, like whether it was in sports or whatever, right? And at that point in my life, it wasn't about the drugs and alcohol. I just didn't feel good. I don't know how to explain it. Like I just always felt unsafe or off. And I don't know if you ever, you know, had that when you were growing up, and it was probably a security thing for me, you know, with bouncing back and forth.
Well, I had parents that divorced at 7, and they're total manipulation between parents. But I do remember, like in my mind, one fight, boom, divorce. You know, but that's not what really was going on. You know,
Right.
But also, I think tons of people tons of people, like we talked about it, but tons of people, like when they do sports, it holds us. And then once the sports falls out, like once we're out of high school or once we're out of college, like it seems we fall off very fast. Because this is one thing I learned once I got in recovery was I read this book. I read some of this book early in recovery. I've read more of it now, but Codependency No More. And, you know, I thought people that are codependent I can't go anywhere unless you're with me. That's all I thought, you know, but that's not really, it is multifaceted. And like, one of the things is that you will like, you'll counter the effect of your home life and like go be a straight A student or go be really good at sports or you're trying to like make everything look great at home when it's not, you know, however you feel. Like it could be good at home, but you feel it's not. So you go out and like perform to show everybody. That's where you get like sometimes straight A students or like really good athletes, or just, it doesn't have to be really good athletes, but just people that are like trying to. And
then you find out they did something pretty bad, right? Like later, because they had all this other stuff, but they're projecting this.
Correct. Yes.
And absolutely, dude. I suffer from that. Like, you know, working the steps and going through the program, you know, worked AA, and now I made a hard switch to NA, which is, I've only offended a few people in meetings with saying the wrong verbiage, but you know, absolutely, like all of those things, man, and still deal with that at 10 years clean and sober, right?
Me too.
Like still struggle with that. But, you know, I just didn't know drugs and alcohol until I was about 16. You know, baseball was my life, travel ball, all the things. And once I left MTCS, I went to web school for a year. And to be honest, man, like looking back, I love the concept, but a lot of the kids, it just wasn't a good experience for me because the kids have a little more money that are up there, right? And so at the time, I had a really hard time making friends my ninth grade year, but I was still starting varsity playing ball. And I don't know, man, never participated. And I went on a ski trip with them that year. My grandmother scrounged some money together to send me on the trip. And, you know, they're all partying in one of the rooms. And I go knock on the door because they invited me. And my roommate was a Korean exchange student, and we could barely talk to each other. But I've had a blast skiing with him for 5 days. And I walk into this room, and they're all smoking and drinking. They're like, "You want to come in?" I'm like, "No, I'm good." I was so proud of myself. You know, I walked out, went back to my room, hung out with Kim, you know. And it really, it wasn't until I left my freshman year from web and I went to public school, because I thought, okay, got tainted by the Christian aspect.
Yeah.
I got tainted by the rich kids, right, is how I looked at it. And now I'm like, let's go to public school. That'll work out good. No influence there. So, you know, about the time I made that switch my sophomore year to Oakland, I didn't get what I wanted. I got cut from the baseball team, but I stuck with it. I kept doing pitching lessons. I kept working. And then Coach Hawks called me in and brought me in his classroom and was like, "I made a mistake. You know, I want to bring you on JV." And really, I contribute a lot of keeping my nose clean to sports, you know, like staying busy. We say it all the time. Like, now we got to stay busy, but have balance. Right. And, that was a time in my life where I felt like I had a victory, you know, but I didn't even see it then. You don't see things till down the road when you look back. And I didn't appreciate it. And I used to look at it like my dad wanted it more than I did. But what I didn't know was until I lost it and couldn't play anymore, how much it really meant to me.
Yeah.
You know, and then it left this huge gaping void. But anyways, I went through playing ball, but that's when I really started to dabble on the weekends. I started to drink.
16, 17?
16, 17, head was all over the place. So they decided to put me on Adderall, which really kind of jumped off the abuse of a prescription pill, because I wasn't taking them properly or orally, right? So, and got around the friends that did it that way. And it was honestly a matter of time before it bled into painkillers. You know, I'm millennial, our generation. I don't know any other generation that suffered as much
From
opioids, from
Yeah.
just that whole pandemic coming through, and then the progression to heroin and now fentanyl, right?
Yeah.
I've seen it all.
It was a huge progression
It
during
was.
that time. Yeah.
But anyways, you know, everybody hits that crossroads in their life where they're like, "Man, I could have went left or right, but I hit a wall." Well, I did. I went to college and played JUCO, and we were talking earlier about codependency. Relationships was one of my biggest killers and still is. Because of my past, I want to be a people pleaser because of fear of losing somebody. So, and then sometimes that bleeds into resentment and all these things. We won't go there today, but it's a whole progression, and it's something that I have to work on every single day. But the girl I was dating was like, "Hey, you know, you're too far away at college. I don't think this is going to work." So the day I was supposed to start varsity, which started my ticker for my 4 years of eligibility,
Yeah, as soon as you start.
I packed up and left. I called my dad. He came and got me.
Because she said that?
Because she said she was going to break up with me. So that's how strong my codependency was. It wasn't just on substances. It's on people.
Yeah, for
too,
sure.
you know. So anyways, I pack up, come home, and we get back together, and I start working for my dad doing construction. He's in real estate and construction, has been for over 30 years here locally. And man, this poor man. I put it through a lot. Sorry, That was a random emotion that came up, but I think about my dad and everything that he dealt with, and when we're in the throes of our addiction, we find it really easy to blame the family disease or the issues that caused it. But being a dad now, I think it puts things into perspective because you realize they do the best they can once you're there. But anyways, man, so like,
there's like a natural progression of like how a child and a parent, like how a child looks at a parent. It's like you idolize, then you like there's separation, and then you resent, and then you learn.
There was a meme about that. I saw.
Yeah, I think so. That you learn like to accept them for.
It's like by 30, you're saying, Dad, you were right.
Yeah, you got it. Like, it's like you're just a human, dude. Yeah.
You can't fill their head too much, though. You guys still point out when they're wrong. That's the addict in me.
Then you got to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't got there yet where you got to take care of them.
No, but dude, I'd do anything for that man. And my mother, like, God, she watched me overdose.
Did your parents know what was going on, like, intricately? Or, because it seemed like.
Remember we talked about the mass projection of, like, being able to cover it up and act like everything's okay?
Yeah.
I was pretty good at that. Even up to the point where I started IV use.
Yeah.
I don't just found ways to hide it or, junkie going to the gym, like trying to keep muscular so I don't look sick. But there came a point where that wasn't sustainable because the addiction just takes over. But yeah.
My father seemed kind of, I would tell him things like, throughout the years, it'd be like 2 years, and we would talk. Like we would see each other a lot, but it seemed like he didn't see it. He didn't understand. He knew that
something was up,
but he didn't. Now my mom, she like knew, like my soul was like, she knew what I was doing.
Moms always know.
They always know. Yeah.
I told on myself the last time. I was like, probably should have done this because everybody's sensitive, family wise, with the addict when they first get sober.
Yeah.
I was like, you feel it in your stomach and you feel like something's off, you're probably right. So I snitched on myself. The last time that I got clean, I was like, I'm just going to lay everything out. And moms and dads do know. But, Dad bringing me home, I wish he'd have told me no. It was a lot of my issues were centered around not having life skills, being able to grow up, taking accountability. And what's crazy is, like, if you would have told me that, I told you go F yourself back in the day, right? But, like, that is, like, a cringe point for addicts, but it's so true. Like, we had something that stunted our growth, whether it was trauma, whether it was emotional, child development, whatever it was, there's something we're running from, and that's why we mask it. So coming home from college was not a good move. A lot of the people that were using drugs that I used to run with were still here, and their addiction progressed as well. So as a result of that, my using progressed. Bad decisions, fights, stealing cars, putting myself in unsafe situations, and my parents not knowing if they're going to get a phone call, that they found me in a ditch somewhere. So ultimately, coming home, pain pills kind of progressed. That's where that picked up. And it was a matter of time before I started IV use. And I was probably one of the few, as far as the group of my friends that started IV. So I kind of got shunned. This was back in like 2011.
Yeah, I was shunned
and
too.
It's crazy. Every one of them that shunned me ended up doing it. And then I helped them later. So that's why I tell people, like, if you think for 1 minute you can't go that far in your addiction, just never say not yet.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. But anyway, so running with the wrong people kind of pushed back into that. And then it progressed eventually into the IV stuff, which in 2011, it's about the time that I started getting in trouble. It was pretty rapid. Once the IV use started, I was off the rails.
Yeah, it changes you quick.
Oh, dude. It's completely different. It's scary when you look back. But I used to embrace scary. I used to embrace chaos. And so the more I felt out of control, the more I felt in control, which was crazy.
You talked about pretty much not fitting in at MTCS, not fitting in at Webb, not fitting in at public school.
There seems to be a trend.
Yeah. Did you fit in?
With my addict friends?
Yes.
I thought so.
Okay.
Until they robbed, stole, blind. You know how those types of friends are, right?
Yeah, you can still fit in and still get fucked over, you know. But
And used.
yeah, and used. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're also,
We're all wounded. I mean, that's the reality.
yeah, that's what it is. We're all wounded, and everybody's okay being wounded together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's sitting here going, "No, I'm better than you." You know, like everybody's.
I don't know. My friends thought I was a pretty bad addict. I was like, dang, dude.
I mean, not once you cross over into territory of like everybody's needle using.
Yeah. I got cut off a couple of times, you know,
Yeah,
for
me
throwing
too.
shoes at dealers' windows because I had to be at work and was withdrawing, you know, all those fun things. That whole comment, man, you're a good guy. I don't want to deal to you anymore because I don't want to see you like this. I'm like, would you shut up and give me 3 of them?
Stupid. Yeah.
But, you know, it's funny, man. Like that whole thing, like, I hate it happened, but like I'm glad it happened because it led me to where I'm at today. You know, I don't know where the heck I'd be. And thank God for the police officers that got me because ultimately that's what did it. Once it progressed so much, it was like multiple consecutive charges, like a DUI.
Yeah.
And then getting in trouble at Toots parking lot here in town. I sold 100 Lortabs to an undercover narcotics officer.
Good job.
And I'm on recording saying, if you're wearing a wire, you have to tell me by law. They don't.
They don't.
No. One of my addict friends told me that. And she was an informant. It was still a grimy scenario because she was dealing the whole time.
Yeah.
But it saved my life. Went through, was looking at 1129. I took 5 years probation, but, you know, they were wanting me to, you know, roll over and do all this stuff. And I was just like, look, man, because I'm not stupid. I've watched that girl that got me, right? She was still in the throes of addiction. Like, I was scared. At that point, when my attorney looked at me and I was like, what's jail like? He's like, I was like, you get rec time and all that. He's like, no, you're going to like the big jail. He's like, you get 1 hour rec a day. I was like, I'll take the 5-year probation for 5, please.
Yeah.
And that's the time that I started my journey through treatment. Judge Ash here in town, thank God, let me go to treatment. He didn't like to do that a lot. But what a lot of people don't know about Judge Ash is he started the recovery court here in town. He was also the judge that had prosecuted more people for drug cases in Middle Tennessee. But I got up on the stand and he knew my dad. It was like, he's like, oh, you're Mitchell Bowman's son, aren't you? And I was like, yes, sir. He's like, your dad's a good man. He's like, if I see you in this room again, you're getting the full 2-year sentence. And I was like, yes, sir. So you would think that would be enough to make me never go back to using, right? But that's just not how our brains work. So I went to treatment in 2011 for the first time. I went there 3 times. I got kicked out all 3 times. The first time I got kicked out for a girl sneaking. Well, not her initially, but she snuck me a Suboxone.
Oh, okay. So
That
not
was good.
girls. It was drugs.
Actually, no. First time I lied and I showed up, said I was detoxed, and I wasn't. So I started withdrawing on their couch. Had to go to Rolling Hills, came back. Then that happened. She gave me Suboxone. And then the next time, I mean, you're going to get a kick out of this, I did kiss a girl. But I did it like out in the woods smoking area when it was fall. So the trees weren't, like they didn't have leaves. So the therapists were just looking over the balcony watching it happen and called me out. So, and then I came back a 3rd time, and that's where I met my daughter's mother. So remember I said this is going to get crazy?
Yeah.
We're going to start. So I met, and they told me, they said, Matt, they were like, we'll let you come back this 3rd time, but you have to sign a contract. So the contract was if a girl was on the top level, I had to be on the bottom. If she was on the bottom, I had to be on the top.
At all times.
And I was a smart ass on intake, and I was like, so if they're on both levels? She goes, you got to be outside. I'm like, this is not going to go well. So first day I walk in a group, and there's a girl in my group, you know, fairly attractive. And I'm like, oh, here's a test, right? Failed the test. Eventually started passing notes, built a relationship with her. We dysregulated so many people's treatment because they were hyper fixated on our relationship. Crazy part was there were 2 other couples dysfunctioning at the same time that were sneaking off to the woods, but we had never gotten physical, but we got all the heat, you know, because it was little more evident, I guess. We weren't as good at hiding it. And anyways, by the end of that stay, I got kicked out. The two couples rode off together in their car and left treatment. That poor clinical director, looking back, must have been like, I was just trying to help a life, but so doing the holier and holier, Superman thing that men can do in recovery. I'm like, no, you don't leave treatment. You're good. You stay, save, help yourself. And so I went home, and she got kicked out about 3 days later, man. So I followed her down to Florida. This would have been 2013 after those multiple stints in treatment, and went to a sober living down there, and I got her pregnant. And I stayed sober for almost a year, Matt, but it was like I was hanging out with people that were doing their program, right? Like my buddy Jesse Reuter runs a program down there now, but he was working the steps, and I just hung out with those people, and it rubbed off on me.
Osmosis.
Yeah, osmosis.
Yeah.
Like I got the slightest taste, right? And then I got the call from her that she was going to go back to Georgia. At this point, she's pregnant with my baby. I've caught her drinking while I'm in sober living. She was drunk on a 75 when I picked her up one day. We were driving down 75. Is it 95? 95 runs through Florida. It's the main interstate.
Yeah.
And I'm going about 70, and she tries to jump out when I call her out on alcohol. So, she wasn't doing well. And so the obvious solutions, let's go take custody of your stepdaughter, because her ex-husband was also an addict, and he was on a run. And he's sober today, man. Me and him have a relationship. My oldest daughter, half sister, they have relationships now. So that's the gift of recovery, right? But at the time, he was loaning his car out to dealers in Atlanta and sleeping under bridges. So we packed everything up. I left my support system in recovery with a girl that couldn't stay sober, wouldn't do anything. And so we moved up to Marietta, Georgia, and about 4 months later had Charlotte, my oldest daughter. At that time, I wasn't drinking. I was still sober. I was managing a GNC off Howell Mill Road in downtown Atlanta. And things were good. But shortly after the baby was born, that's when everything kind of took a turn. Tiffany, my ex-wife, hemorrhaged during childbirth, and we didn't know if she was going to make it. So, I'm sitting here, they're trying to hand me Charlotte, and she's like bleeding out. And I'm like, I want her, but I don't. Like, I can't do this without her. You know what I mean? So I asked the doc, I'm like, is she going to be okay? And he's like, I don't know, because by law, they can't tell you yes or no. So
Yeah.
I'm freaking out. But thank God they were able to fix everything there, and they gave her painkillers. So, it's going. She's ex-addict. So it was probably about 3 weeks after the baby was born. She was saying she was getting back in the gym or going to try to start walking, doing all these things on the treadmill. So she was going to the gym, supposedly. But I also started noticing like Amazon packages not showing up that she said she was ordering, but money was coming up missing. So like that's what kind of triggered me to start like focusing in on what she was doing. So one night I followed her, and I hated doing it, but like I'm like, dude, I know I'm not crazy. Like every time I ask about the packages that correlate to the money missing,
They're not there.
they're not there. There's no, like, it's like a deflection. So I followed her. She pulls into an ATM the complete opposite way of the gym. And then I just keep following her. I like see her pull money out, and she's heading down to the Bluffs in Atlanta. So I called her. I'm like, so where are you going? And, like us addicts do, she like turns it on me being crazy. She was going for a drive. Like, how could I follow her? Da, da, da. And then a week later, she tells me she had relapsed on heroin. At that point, I'd never done heroin. Never went down that path. It was always pills. Everything was controllable. It's not controllable when you buy it off the streets. So once, she started using, Matt, I tried to get her sober. I was like, let's go to a meeting. Let's go do this. So one night, we went to two churches, and we couldn't find a meeting, dude. I swear. Like, Matt, we were trying. We were on the little meeting list for, Georgia. And everywhere we went, we couldn't find the room. So I had met this guy, tattoo artist, at a gas station. And I was like, here's a logical idea. Since we can't find a meeting, let's go get a tattoo.
Okay. Logical. Yeah. All right.
So we show up at the tattoo artist, shop. We pick out what we're going to do. And then he pulls out a Roxy 30 in front of me and starts breaking it down. So the insidiousness of our way our head works. I'm sitting there the entire time, like watching him, and he's like, "You cool with this?" I'm like, "Sure." 2 hours later, he becomes my dealer, because I'm like, "Can you get more of those?" And that's when me and her were off to the races. Eventually, the controlled pills ran out, and all that was left was heroin. And I didn't use light, because if I was at that point, if I was using, I used to, like, if it killed me, I didn't care. I just didn't want to feel.
Yeah, that's how I use.
Yeah. So it got pretty bad. Multiple overdoses. Didn't know what overdosing was, but I overdosed, We did a lot of things that I regret. The kids, we tried to keep them from seeing it, right? But they had to know something was up. But they were in the car when we would pick up drugs. They were present at times. And that was my biggest guilt, was like I didn't fully expose them, but they were still exposed regardless. And we weren't present. We weren't parents. Bills may have been paid. Food may have been on the table. But like that went away quick. And it was, bouts of her getting sober, me getting sober, then us trying to do it together, and then one would pull the other one out.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the honest solution was, well, let's just get married. Like,
what?
We had a baby, shotgun wedding. Let's go up to the courthouse. So we got married, and I don't know why we did this. We went on a honeymoon, and the honeymoon was terrible because we were drug seeking the entire time. We tried to detox, then we went. And so the entire time we're there, we're in party land. Let's drink and do all the things that we know we shouldn't do. And spent the whole time, Matt, basically looking for cocaine in Mexico and getting it. And eventually getting kicked out of our hotel because we got into a big fight on our honeymoon. That's what kind of bled into me going to treatment. I came home, and as we're headed home, we got kicked out of the hotel in Cancun on our honeymoon. Like the last day, we were literally about to walk out and got kicked out. They asked us to leave. And we flew in to Atlanta, and she's like, "Hey, I want to get high. If you don't go buy anything, like, I'm going to take the kids and leave." Swear to God, exactly what she said, and I believed her. But I didn't really believe her. I wanted to get high. That was the real truth. And I just didn't want to feel the way I felt. I felt trapped. I felt like we were both trapped, in this relationship. So come home. We go up to the MLK downtown Atlanta. That's where we meet our dealer. We pick up our stuff. We come home. My poor mother's been watching our girls, been watching oldest from her first marriage, and then Charlotte. And walk straight upstairs with the stuff. We go into the bathroom, and she takes hers, and I draw mine up, and she's like, looks at me, she's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "That's going to kill you." And I looked at her and I said, "I don't really care." So I put like 0.5 gram into the syringe, hoping it would kill me. So apparently what happened, because I don't remember anything after the initial shot, was I apparently fell out and hit my face and fell out going into overdose on the floor. And just painting a picture. This is like why. Like, I wish I could take trauma away from my mother. But Tiffany locked herself in the closet, was crying, wouldn't open the door. So I was basically laying on the floor dying, and finally my mom somehow got in and started performing CPR. And that's honestly the only reason I lived till the paramedics got there. But being a dad now, thinking of your mother, we're thinking of me doing that to my kid.
Yeah.
Having to do CPR. God, and your dad too. I mean, just, it's our worst fear, like that they don't feel good about themselves enough that they go down that path and that you have to go through that. And anyways, she kept me alive until the paramedics got there. I think I had 1 beat per minute for 5 minutes, so I was almost gone. And I I tell people this about my story all the time. Like, you know, what does it look like when you go out? And I don't know what your experience was, but mine was really dark. I didn't see a light, but I heard a voice, and I always joke that it was the paramedics, you know, rubbing the things together and hitting me, but the voice said, "I'm not done with you yet." And I remember like seeing myself over top, and it was weird, man. Like I could see my mom, I could see the paramedics. And then it was like I came back in the back of the ambulance when they got me downstairs. I don't remember anything between because they hit me with Narcan finally. And boy, I tried to run out of that freaking ambulance. They had to hit me and knock me out. But this is how insidious it was. The same stuff that just killed me. I had my wife bring it to the hospital right after I overdosed. And the whole time, this makes me laugh actually. The nurses walk up and they're like, "Mr. Bowman?" They have my drug screen, you know, in their hand. They're like, "Have you been using any illicit substances?" And I'm like, "No, nope." "Well, it says here you tested positive for opioids. You're not taking anything?" "No, it must have been my supplements." So I blamed it on vitamins. But that's how sick. And then I'm taking shots of the same stuff that killed me in the bathroom at the hospital. And then I came home and I was using the last shot. And that's when I made the decision. Because I looked in the mirror. And like I was 145 pounds. You see me now, I'm 190, and I'm right under 6 foot. So I was sick. And Mockingbird by Eminem was playing in the background. But I know it's a funny song to like break down to, but it just made me think of my girls and what I was putting them through.
It's a pretty emotional song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was weird. I got in the shower, started like trying to scrub myself clean. Like I felt like I couldn't get clean. It was really a weird experience. And then like I hit my knees and I told God, I was like, "Man, I've tried it my parents' way. I've tried it everybody else's way but yours." And that was January 2014, July 29th, 2014. And that's when I made a decision to go to treatment for the last time. And at that point I had to kiss my kids goodbye at the airport. I was motivated. Like I wanted to change. And it started with wanting to change for Charlotte, but eventually it became for myself because I saw the bigger picture. And I also knew that if I didn't get well, my kids weren't going to have a mom or a dad.
Yeah.
You know, and so moved down to Florida, went to treatment. We tried to get Tiffany to go. And I wish she would have went. I wish she still had her mom, you know, and she didn't. She wanted to keep the kids, and we tried to give trust, right, while I was in treatment, and got a phone call. My therapist called me in the office, said they got a phone call from my mother that Tiffany had gotten arrested. She was drunk with kids driving through Dallas, Georgia at 10 miles an hour in a 45. So they took her, and I don't know, man. Like when I got into treatment the last time, Matt, like I thought I was the only problem. I was taking all of it on me. And thank God for my therapist, because Barbara was this sweet Buddhist lady, you know, different, background, religion, whatever, but she supported mine and we just vibed well. And she didn't push. She was just like, "Hey, why don't you do this assignment?" And I started doing everything they asked. All the assignments they asked, I actually didn't shortchange them, didn't do half a page. I did it to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
But it was, you got to write a letter to your daughter and then to one separate one to your wife as an apology. Man, I poured out. I was crying for my daughters because she's innocent. She didn't deserve that. And she was caught in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
Even though she was only, I got clean when she was 1. She still had to go through the experience with her older sister.
Yeah.
And anyways, I wish she would have went. It took a while for her to finally make a decision, but what I did was, I kept trying to rescue. She'd get kicked out of a sober living. I'd move her into another one. I'd go pick her up in some crummy, I'm pretty sure they were prostituting people out of one of these places down in South Florida. I had to go pick her up one night, and she had men for roommates, which was very triggering, and it didn't look safe. But I kept trying to save her. and she'd keep drinking and getting kicked out, keep drinking, getting kicked out. I would take her to go get a job, helped her get a job at a dealership, build a resume. All the while I'm trying to keep myself sober, work a job as, manager at GNC down there and get my life together. And she gets kicked out the last time I move her in briefly because I'm like, well, you've exhausted pretty much every sober living in the surrounding area that's close to me where I can help, right? And she comes home to the apartment one night, and we're not back together. I'm just giving her a place to land, and she's in her boss's car. That's weird. Well, they had engaged in some sort of relationship, and that wasn't problematic for me. What the problem was, she showed up drunk. And she had a bunch of like singles in her purse, and I had other people around me saying, Tyler, this isn't good for you. Other people in recovery that are close to me, like, this isn't a good idea. It dawned on me about then, like, this is not safe for my recovery. So I asked her to leave. She wouldn't leave. And I had to physically like pick her up and be like, you've got to get out, and get her out the door. I took the key and I left and went to a meeting with my buddy Adam because I was just so messed up, dude. Just like I didn't want to do it, but I knew that it was life or death at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that if I got pulled back in, one of us was going to die. And
you're also just putting yourself in an emotional roller coaster risk of like,
it's not worth it, and it's not worth my kid not having me too, is the way I looked at it. And anyways, so I stayed down in South Florida for about 2 years, and that's when I started looking at trying to get back home to my daughter. I had met my wife now when I was 8 months sober. I gave myself a year. I didn't make it a full year to not be in a relationship, but I knew that was one of my trigger points, so I had to do some work first. So
how close did you make it?
8 months.
Okay.
8 months, so 4 months shy. But
did you date the person?
I dated around, and then that's about the time I met Gina, and then I kind of, I knew something was there.
Sometimes you just know,
I didn't know. So I met her like online.
Oh, you met her online?
My friend, yeah. I've never dated anybody that I met online. And my buddy, he hit me up and he goes, hey, check your messages. He was like, there's a girl that's local here that was following us. Like she did physique and all that. But what she was wanting to do is she was looking like friending us because she wanted to work with our trainer for competitions. But anyways, he had reached out and asked if she was single. I was like, I got a friend, that he's not been dating. He's been through, some stuff, but think y'all be good. And so he calls me. He's like, man, she likes God and tattoos. And I'm like, yeah, because that's the combo, right? God and tattoos. But no, we started talking, and then it turned into a date. And then we met at a restaurant, and I didn't know she had her dad, code word back up. Like, if I'm a creep, he's going to like come snag her from the restaurant, but it went well. We got in the car and we drove 3 hours to Miami, and we went to a Halsey and Imagine Dragons concert, and Halsey was the opener, so she wasn't even big yet. We stayed for Halsey, left, went to a casino, hung out, and she tells me this to this day. She found out my background. She ran my back. Smart girl. She's the safe one. I'm the wild, reckless idiot, right? But she worked at Mulligan's, and I guess she ran a background check on me. And so she gets to my house, and I open up about my whole history to her. She's like, I'm glad you talked about this because I was coming over to confront you about it because I ran your background. I was like, why the hell did you show up? If you're so safe, but I'm glad you did. And anyways, we stayed together for about 5 months, and it was about that time that I was looking to move, and she'd always wanted to move to Tennessee. That's where her parents talked about moving before she lost her mom to cancer. And so
she lived in Miami.
She lived in Port St. Lucie.
Okay.
We just drove down to Miami for that concert.
Got you. Okay.
She and I was in Jensen Beach, so we were 15 minutes from each other.
Okay.
But like you said, when you know, you kind of know.
Yeah, for sure.
She still says she knew immediately.
Yeah, they definitely know.
And we packed up and moved home. So that was kind of my progression of getting back, and I don't know if you want to get into what's happened since then. I know we talk about the story itself or how much time we have.
Yeah, it's what it was like, which is what you just did.
Yeah.
And then what happened, which
Yeah.
is and then what's like now.
Well, after moving back, I was doing outreach. That was kind of what brought me back here. I called my buddy Mickey. I was like, hey man, he was working at a program in Florida. I was like, I really want to go home, but I don't want to market here, because that was the time that all the head hunting and the crazy stuff. And I was like, dude, I'm not doing that. I can't operate like that. I was like, I'll be using tomorrow. Like, so he called me coincidentally 2 days later. He's like, it's a funny thing. I went in for a marketing meeting. They're looking for people local to their state to market. This might be an opportunity for you to go home. So they paid for me to move. I probably brought them 0 patients. And it led me to my next job, which was with JourneyPure.
Were you outreach or BD?
Dude, I was outreach, but like I was doing community advocacy. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just walking around talking about Narcan and treatment and like putting a town hall meeting together before they became a money reach for programs.
Okay.
You know,
so you
like,
were doing outreach.
I was doing
advocacy.
outreach,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like to get to make the contacts. It was just to spread the word, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
A little more. But anyways, JourneyPure hired me shortly after, about 2 months after I moved back. And I was like, man, this is a blessing and amazing opportunity to serve the area that I ran around and was a problem in, you know, and to help people I know. So that's been the coolest part.
Was JP already open? Or
Yeah, they only had Murfreesboro.
Walnut or
They had
River?
Murfreesboro and Knoxville, and they were about to acquire the one in Florida.
Okay.
And they were still all out of network program.
Yeah.
So
early.
it was still real early, and it was great.
They weren't in network when they did the River. When they started.
They started out network. A lot of people don't know that.
They went more and more and more in network.
Yeah, but it was a good experience. Loved my boss.
Who was your boss?
Jamie Vance.
Jamie Vance.
He actually passed about 2 months ago.
Yeah. Super sad.
Yeah, but an amazing guy. You know, and I knew the kind of guy he was in our relationship, but until I heard other people talk, I didn't realize how much he didn't talk about that he did for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I admired the heck out of that. But anyways, he was the leader that was like, we're not selling. This is relationship. Like, we're here to save lives. And once that kind of narrative flipped with JP, that's when I was looking to move. Like, it's hard for me to, it wasn't a slight to the person who was there. It's hard for me to follow someone that I don't vibe with the same. So I made a decision to leave. I went to work at Tulip Hill for a couple of years with Ben Jones. Love that guy, and known him for a long time. And that's what kind of jumped off the progression of me starting Brooks Healing Center. Was it's like, man, you know, I kind of want to do this. I kind of watched Ben do it. I kind of want to. And Ben, you know, was probably going to give me another position or move me up within. But thank God I had him, because there came a point where I was putting people in, but I was just carrying my job, and he knew what I was doing, so he supported it, you know, and I can't thank him enough for that. But started the process of looking into property, and we found the property through Jamie out in Normandy, Tennessee.
Is that how you found it?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so it's funny. I took a job. So once I left Ben, I'd put in my 2-week notice. I was supposed to open a detox here in town, over by the hospital at St. Thomas Rutherford. We were going to build a structure out there, do a 36-bed detox, and I had a couple partners. Well, they pulled the deal out from under, and they were like, hey, you know, we have people moving in the area. We don't want to do that. So they offered me less equity, less money. And I was just like, well, I'm not going to struggle more. Like, I'm going to make a move up, right? So I called him and I said, man, I appreciate everything. You know, you've been willing to give me a part of something that I'm no longer putting any money into, but I'm going to have to pass. And so I took a job with my buddy Mickey. So the guy I got sober with in South Florida, my last time, we've been in each other's weddings. We've 12-stepped each other back into treatment. You know, he's the one that got me in the last time too. Got me from point A to point B. Had a resentment. He tricked me into a 60-day program. But his response was, "Well, you're alive." So I couldn't really knock him for that.
Yeah.
He saved my life, man. But anyways, Mickey was like, "Man, I've watched you get jerked around for a book of business. Like, why don't you just come up here and work for me until you figure it out?" So I flew up to Indiana to do my onboarding, my drug screen, all the things. And Jamie calls me the night before I'm flying out, and he's like, "What are you doing?" Like, taking a job in Indiana. He's like, "Why the hell are you doing that?"
Why are you doing that?
I was like, "Well," and I told him everything that happened, with the deal and falling through and me turning it down. And
I didn't know about that deal.
I'm proud of myself for that. I could have sold out.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And there were times year one at Brooks, I wanted to get out. But I'll tell you this, man, like, thank God for the people in my life that have kind of steered me along the way, because I couldn't have done it on my own.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us can. That's why we're built for community as humans, right? But anyways, so Jamie, I flew out at 4:30 in the morning out of Indiana's airport. I met him at 7 a.m. for breakfast. And that's when we started the conversation. He's like, "So all this, and you have backers, you have investors, but you're not going to start your own program?" I was like, "No, maybe." It's like, "Why not?" I'm like, "Because I'm scared, honestly, at the idea of taking on something so large."
It's big.
Yeah, it's huge. I didn't think about it. You got your detox and residential. Those are two businesses. I think I forgot that. But I think you also have to be blindly optimistic.
For sure.
Passionate to go into something, and you can attest to that with Threshold.
Yeah, I mean, you wanted to do it. You had not intention. You had, like, when you were at JP, you wanted to do it. I remember talking to you about it.
I did say that. I guess
Yeah.
I blocked that out.
Yeah. You, like, it was something you wanted to do, But we go through phases. Like, for me, like, I've probably sat down at the table 7 times with people that want to do something in treatment with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the jump. For me, it's not the jump of, like,
Starting it.
One is, well, I would want to do it without the investors, which is maybe the jump. Like, but I also, like, I want to believe in what I'm doing. And I'm not at a space that I've got closer and closer over the time of understanding, well, how can I navigate this and still keep my ethics? Because it does get out there. And, like, one of my friends, he opened a detox, tried to jump out. And then over time, like, he was like,
Good guy. I know who you're talking about.
he's like, grimy, don't like it.
Yeah.
You got to play a game you don't want to play. And I was like, I mean, that's what we talked about before you did it, and, like, but he did the right thing, in totality, he did the right thing. He tried. And, like, I don't want to be in that situation where I have to do anything.
I do want to say this, though. You can do the right thing. The struggle will just be harder in the beginning.
For sure. Yes.
That's one of the things I'm so grateful for, is we've always done the right thing
I agree.
at Brooks. And the people that I have, I'd always said I need a group, like just one person even.
Yeah.
And I'm blessed to have, Gage and Brandon now and Katie, the
Katie,
people that
don't
I have.
forget
I
Katie.
can't. Yeah. I mean, everybody's important there.
Yeah.
Nobody is above anybody, but I had to have somebody that when the chips were falling that I could lean on, and I didn't have that year one. That's why pulling in my driveway, there were times where I'm like, "God, are you sure?" Like, this is a lot, but fast forward now, and, like, year 4, we're doing great. We've helped over 300 people last year. That's amazing.
It
and
is.
if we change one, that's all I said I wanted to start this for. So let that sink in. But
It's a great program.
it's the culture, man,
Yeah.
that kind of sets it apart. But what I'm getting at is, the ethics piece is one thing that I think gets skewed a lot. I wish they would have taken federal regulations from Florida and blanketed across the entire country,
That's
because
smart.
now you have facilities that aren't ethically doing the right thing. And I think that's what makes it hard for people not to cross over into unethical, is when you're trying to survive and the chips are down and you're hurting financially because you see all these people doing the wrong thing, but they're flourishing momentarily before they sell their program.
Yeah.
Because that's what they all do, right?
Yeah.
Build it up, sell it, sell it on the market.
I think it's not unethical as if it was in 2010 in Florida. I don't think it's that unethical. I think there's iffy stuff that, and I don't.
I think
and
they just got smarter.
And I also,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it just got smarter.
Also, like for me, like I don't. Even people wanted to come in and invest in Threshold itself, like without treatment early on, and like okay, boom, I could move to 5 houses to 20, and like we can move in this space. But for me, like I want to be in a place where when I sit down and write the standards of living at Threshold and how I operate and how the ethics are there, like that's between me and God. And I find that it's divine in nature. I answer to him only. I don't need to answer to anybody's money about what we're doing at Threshold.
Amen.
So like, I don't ever want to be in that situation. And like being in treatment, you need a lot more money to never do that. Yeah. Which in your case, like some of your investors are close to you. So that helps, you know, versus these people, a lot of these people were just money, you know?
Well, and imagine, you know, because I didn't just go get a consultant. You know what I mean? I learned everything in lifetime, as did Gage, as did Katie. Probably could have saved myself a headache, but then we wouldn't have learned these things.
Also, you can get involved in
how much experience did we gain because someone didn't do it for us?
True, and you can get involved with the wrong consultants.
That happened anyways. I didn't even touch on that story. That's for another day.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, it's just, I think the leadership piece was the hardest thing to get into, right? And still, it's always a thing you work on, or as far as like, where is my place? Because it's always changing. You know, as you get new employees, as things get alleviated, like how do I keep myself
for you there?
Well, not only that, but how do I show my team I'm a part of and continue to do those things, right? Like sometimes I feel like the glorified maintenance guy, but like if I can go put your blinds up in your office and that makes you happy, I'll go do it. I don't really care. And that's what I love about our staff. Like everyone has that mentality. And it's pretty cool because you can catch Gage plunging a toilet. You might catch Brandon changing bed sheets one day because staff is stretched and maybe. But you know, he's busy. He's doing a lot. So it's just it's been a fun ride, man. And I think the biggest part is just looking back on it and going, you know what? I was so fearful for so long that I didn't have a mission or I didn't have a purpose in life. I think that's why I used, because I felt like, what's the use, man? Like I hated life. I hated everything, right? I was just negative all the time. My thinking was terrible. My perception was skewed of people in the world. I isolated myself. And it's just so cool to see that when I just surrendered, what God can do, what he can actually do and move in your life. And I think where I've struggled the most, and I think every addict is just remembering to look back and have gratitude for that. I feel like that's what it always stems from for us. Anytime we're dysregulated, we've lost our gratitude.
Every time we're dysregulated, we've lost our gratitude.
It's a grandiose statement. It's very general and blanketed.
Trying to grasp it real quick, you know?
But for me, it's been that way. Like gratitude for what my wife does around the house, what my kids are doing right. You know, those types of things. It's just that shift in thinking that I've had to deal with. And anyways, man, that's kind of my story. That's kind of the walkthrough of there's more to it. You know, we won't get into the dark pieces. Yeah. Because the important thing that I think you want people to know is like there's light. For sure. Like the world's beautiful. It's worth fighting for. And really, we're our own worst enemy. So I think that's half the battle, isn't it? And now I have a question for you.
Okay. I don't ever get questions.
You don't?
No, but I like it, actually.
What's something at this point in your recovery that you're working on or that you've noticed still has to be worked on? Because it is always a daily reprieve.
It would probably,
and that may be a little personal, but
that's fine.
You know,
I'm always open. What I'm working on my recovery right now, like last year, I really worked on anger. I worked pretty much powerlessness over anger, you know. But I would say that awareness and constant awareness of my codependency and where I'm fitting and where I'm sitting in that, because understanding the codependency is like, you don't eradicate it. It's not an abstinence-based program, pretty much. It's where do I fit in it today? Like, and being aware of like operating outside of that is probably where I'm sitting.
I think the standard too for guys, right? And there's a reason I'm going here, because that's literally the two things I'm working on.
Yeah.
You know, when you've been married 10 years, interdependency is important. And then on the other side of that, with the way I operate, I'm going to speak for me. When I'm overwhelmed or I have anxiety, that's when the anger comes up. And so that's something I've been focused on too, because I'm not perfect, right? So that's why I asked. And so
I think
what are some things you do, to work through that?
I think for me, the codependency is where the anger shows up.
Expectations on other people?
Yes, expectations on other people.
Oh man, we're so alike.
So I value this person's opinion of me so much that I allow it to anger me. So why do I do that?
And it's a control thing too.
Where do I sit in that, I think like...
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you combat that today?
How do I combat it?
I'm asking for a friend.
Yeah. I don't do very well, but...
Well, you do good, because I'm going to be honest, like, you seem like you go more internal. Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't try to do that.
I wish I could. I know people that when they get angry, they just go internal. I'm like, I wish I would shut down sometimes and not say anything. Since we're being honest.
I've learned to like, I'm not the best at it, but I've learned to just communicate my feelings at a vulnerable level. And if that is not received well, then that's not my problem.
I like that.
But that's hard to live there for me, for someone like me, because I am like...
Very A-type personality.
Yes. And I like... Another thing is like, I don't know how to...
I like this. I like flipping the script.
It's fine.
Yeah. Dialogue.
I like, I think that one thing is like, okay, being in recovery, for me, like, I was almost like brainwashed by recovery. So like how I show up and serve people is like, it was my worth for a long time.
That makes sense.
Okay. Then another thing is like being a husband in general in America, in the standpoint of like who they are, is like, I literally thought the idea of being a husband was, they don't care how I feel today. They care what I produce today. They don't care about what's inside of me. They don't want to know.
I feel like this is a whole podcast
It can
topic
be.
we could do.
Yeah, for sure. But like every time like a man is like, they say they want vulnerability, they say they want you to express your emotions, but every time here I am and I express my emotions, it goes, see, that's you.
Yeah.
I go, well, that is me, but it's pointed out as a weakness, So like, I think as a husband, I thought that's what a husband was somebody that like shows up like a white knight. Brene Brown talks about like vulnerability. Like she says that somebody asked her, it's really, why don't you study men and vulnerability? And they go, well, I've never just done it. And she goes, well, that's, the other person said to her, well, that's really convenient because we also as men want to be vulnerable. And like, he talks about this guy that's like talking to her. She's saying, she's saying this event happened, but like she's saying the guy was like, my daughter and my wife never want to see me fall off my white horse. And if they do, like, I'm not allowed to be vulnerable. So she like took years and studied men and how they show up, So I think that like codependency is like, it falls in line for a man a lot in that area. Like I have to be
a provider.
I have to be compliant. Everybody has to be
strong.
Everybody has to be okay. And I have to be okay. Like I have to take care of everybody.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of shit going on inside of me that nobody really gives a shit about,
I get it. I mean, and I'll give you an example. Like I've made the comment in my head of like, I just feel like somebody always wants something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's made that comment to me in weak moments. And my dad's a strong guy. He doesn't really show his emotions a lot. He's gotten better since he's gotten in church and turned his life over years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I admire the heck out of that. But like, I was in a meeting the other day and like I heard somebody talking, and my epiphany was around this. And I was like, it's self-centeredness. Because I tell myself that it's not about me anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion. It's not about me anymore, but I'm so hung up on what I don't get because I'm giving myself to everybody else. But the problem is, if I would set freaking boundaries for myself, if I would say, hey, I need to do this without getting frustrated for myself, right? Things would be different. But that's part of the challenge. And I think that's where the fun part of growth comes in.
For sure.
But yeah, man, me and you are both working on the same thing, because I think the more you take on responsibility, the more stress you carry, the more you have to work on it.
Yeah. I think that, going through like what I've been going through, like in the last year or whatever, is like one thing that's been really great is in recovery, in my social status, in my business, I'm always at the top. Nobody ever checks on me. Nobody ever says, hey, how are you doing?
Be a lonely place.
It can be a lonely place. And like, I'm vulnerable down.
Yeah.
Like I go, hey man, I got a lot of shit going on.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I need you to help me figure this out. Like I'm open and honest with those people because that's just who I am. I'm kind of all out there. But like during this process, a lot of people have shown up for me. And like, I've just been like, that's pretty cool. A lot of people have been like, just take the time you need.
That's awesome.
Like, how are you doing today? How are you doing this week? Like a lot of people have stepped up, and like, that's a weird experience for me. I've always, even before recovery, I've always been in a place of leadership, even though it was bad leadership sometimes. Like I've always been.
You were learning.
Yeah, I was learning.
A lot of time.
Yeah. I always knew drug addicts followed me places. Now they follow me in recovery.
Whether sober or using, it's like, which one?
Yeah.
When you get to
for
that.
sure. I would look around and go, they're all following me. They're all, I don't know why, but they all are, I would feel bad sometimes.
Well,
A lot of times I would try to, like, the drug addicts, when we were using, I would try to, like, keep them, like, in whatever space they're in their addiction. Like, they would try to move into, like, I want to shoot. And I'd be like, I'd be like, you don't. Like,
don't do that.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it looks like, Let's go for a ride and let you meet these people that do this, They would usually end up still doing it, but at least I would try.
Yeah. And, oh, man, it's just a daily reprieve. I think there are a lot of things that men deal with, and there are a lot of things on the flip side that women have to deal with, right? But I think where the meet in the middle, and this is something I've said in my relationship, I think it holds weight, whether I said it out of frustration or honesty, but like, we have to meet each other where we're at, right, in a relationship. And where I'm at right now is understanding, like, okay, so men are more physical. Like, we just want you to grab our hand, give us a hug or a kiss every once in a while, tell you you love us, because then we feel wanted, we feel validated, right?
Yeah.
And then women, they want the emotional connection.
They also want
you
to feel
can't have
safe.
one without the other in a relationship. And I think that's what I'm working on my end, right? Is, how do I better communicate? Because I've not been perfect.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, problems are different today. I guess you can attest to that. It's like, these are good problems, right?
Yeah.
We're blessed. We're not digging in trash cans, sleeping on friends' couches, or, my go-to is grabbing scrap metal on people's property. And
That was your go-to.
oh, yeah. That, or I would send a picture of a fake busted tire that looked like my car and be like, hey, I have a busted tire.
That's a good one. I've actually got that one before.
Have you?
Yeah, he owes me $20.
Back then, it didn't look as convincing. Now you got ChatGPT. You could just take your car and put a busted tire on it. I hope I didn't put that out there. My bad.
There's these people that, like, at Threshold, we use GPS tracking for their meetings. They don't have to get their paper signed. They could just check in.
I've seen that. It's cool.
But there's people that have figured out how to geo-track and
use VPNs and stuff to show different
that
location.
they're at a different location. I'm like, if you're willing to do
If
that,
we
you
could
got
put-
it, dude.
Bro, if we put half of
I
that
know.
brain power into our sobriety, our recovery, like,
Yeah.
we'd crush it, man.
What do you
This
think
is
like your experience through the steps were the first time? Like, talk on some of that
Oh,
stuff.
so interesting that they're freeing.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely loved my first sponsor, Bill. It was Bill W. Believe it or not the real Bill W.
The Bill W. I know, or a different Bill?
No, this
Okay.
guy's down in Florida. He's
Okay.
a retired fisherman guy.
Okay.
But just what I needed, what he did that I really liked, and I don't know if you've heard this, was he knew I was raging codependent based off of my 4th step. So he was like, well, when we get through the 4th step, I want you to write your ideal mate. He was like, I want you to do your house, what you see your future looking like, how many kids you want. He was like, I want you to go into full detail with everything. Matt, I kid you not. Everything I wrote.
You have. That's cool.
It chokes me up a little bit, but like 3 kids. I had 3 girls. I said brown hair, brown eyes, met Gina. Not a huge house, not a small house, just big enough for all my kids and my animals. I have a car. Like, it's amazing how when you don't, and this is what I'm working on now with, trying to get the business off the ground, the more you don't want things, the more they get provided to you. And so, long story short, 2 years in, I tapered off going to meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I moved back here, so it was like AA wasn't really the same, or at least I convinced myself that it wasn't.
Yeah, it's hard to make new connections and all that. Yeah,
But also,
it's also different.
made excuses, right? I can take responsibility for that. Like, take your ass to a meeting until you get to know people, build a network. I didn't do that. So because of that, when I lost 2 patients, one I went to high school with, and then my grandmother within 6 months, dude, I felt like I was using, but I wasn't. I broke down marketing in Atlanta, just started crying out of nowhere. My boss called to check in, could tell something was off, and was like, you need to bring your ass back. And 2 years sober, he sent me to on-site because I had so much grief and loss, and Tiffany was not shortly before that. I never got to that in my story, but Tiffany ended up overdosing down in South Florida when I was 2 years sober up here after I moved home. And it just all hit me, dude. And I wasn't taking care of myself. And then I would do this weird thing over the past 10 years where I would go to church, and I get what I need. And then I would kind of taper off with church, not as consistent. Or I would go to CR, or I would go to AA and feeling a little better. And then I go back. And it was just like this thing, but it's recently snowballed on me.
So you were kind of like
White knuckling it, I would
kind
say.
of, but like being there long enough that you could still hide, like go to CR enough to meet really nobody and then leave.
Yeah, but it wasn't for anybody. It was because I was really hurting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And anyways, thank God for the people I have around me, because, I was talking to Gage. I was like, I think I need a professional coach. I'm over here like looking at, paying this guy. And then he's like, but you do a good job leading here. Like, what do you need one for? And I started telling him like some of the stuff, the feelings that I'm having.
It's like, you need a sponsor.
The way the way that like my wife looked at me and was like, I'm good. It just seems like you're not good. And I'm like, I'm creating my own shit. You know what I mean? And like, things are good. And so when he heard that, he was like, well, it sounds like you need a sponsor. So I got one. I started with my sponsor, started back, but I made the hard switch to NA, which if they're a purist that watch your show, they're going to hate that I've said sober, clean and sober and all the things. But, I realized that that's what I needed. So I'm back working the steps again. I'm on step 1.
It's good.
At 10 years. But
I did that last year.
I still call it,
great.
You know what I call it? And then what I struggled with? Maybe you can help me with this. Like, if you have an emotional relapse, but you don't use, do you still pick up a key tag?
Nah.
Okay.
No.
I was sitting in the meeting the other day.
Well, I'm
It's
an
like,
emotional
hey.
relapse every 2 years. You don't every 6 months,
Yeah, but it's always self-inflicted for me.
It's always
It's when I
self-inflicted.
stop doing the things.
It is.
Yeah.
Some people struggle. I struggle with discipline. So, it's just like doing the right thing all the time and like knowing
You
Yeah.
don't know this, but I'm sure if you talk to Brandon Gage, I struggle with timeliness.
Timeliness.
I always try to shove like 14 things
Things
in
at once, yeah.
and then I end up late apologizing.
You were early today.
I was, because I said I'm not going to do this to Matt because then he's going to call Gage and Brandon.
Hey, guess what
I
time
feel
I
like
did?
Tyler showed up 20 minutes late today.
I'd have canceled.
I know, because your time's important.
It is important.
I'm glad you respect your own time.
Yeah.
Yeah, another form of self-centeredness you don't realize, right?
Yeah.
Timeliness.
I've got worse over the years. I used to be so,
Well, you added more on your plate.
yeah. I used to be so rigid with time and like I was always early to everything. And now I'm like on time. And then I'm usually on time still, but there are times where I'm like, it depends what the event is, I guess.
Yeah, like if it's our breakfast, like me and you show up whenever, like
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah,
Like
it could be 10 minutes
10
late.
minutes late,
Yeah.
10 minutes early.
I mean, we also work in a field where sometimes we get on the phone with somebody that's just like, it's an important phone call or like it's a referral or, like whatever. It's a business call. And like, I got to take care of it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was fun, dude. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It has been fun. There's one question I ask every guest at the end, which is, what's your deepest fear? When you answer it,
Dang.
you have time to think about it. But when you answer it with the question. Like say, my deepest fear is. So, what's your deepest fear? You have time. Take your time and then answer.
Today, my deepest fear is something happening to my kids and wife. It's really something that, like, there was one night that I had a dream something happened. I woke up like freaking out, thinking something happened to my daughter. The fears have changed over time, right? Like, that's honestly the biggest one. I brought that up in our men's ministry group that I go to Wednesdays. And, but I realized what it is. It's absence of faith, because God's in charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to take care of them, or whatever his plan is going to happen. I just can control the measurables. But yeah, dude, that's like my biggest fear, is that everything that I ever wanted could get taken away. Because I'm grateful, dude. I have the family I wanted, and, to have that and to have something happen, I think is every dad's fear.
It is.
Yeah.